I think the Steelers, and they've shown this through the last 30 years, they can survive without any one player. Even when Ben's been knocked out of the lineup, they have survived. So they're going to survive. This is just and I think that we should use the L.Bell as a test case in the NFL for, does the franchising tag, does it work? And if it does work, how is it supposed to work? Because I think ownership has done the players a disservice. When the players agreed to being the franchise tag with the collective bargaining agreement, I don't think that they understood the ramifications. And if a running back is franchised, it is not a good thing. We know Kirk Cousins went through this a couple times. Yeah, he got paid, he got paid an astronomical amount of money in those 2 years they franchised him and still hit free agency. So a quarterback, what type of injury is going to alter his career? It's a lot different than a running back. L.Bell had 400 touches last year. At the age he's at, they said, man, you're going to put another 350 touches on his body? Like, I understand what he's doing. I understand the business side of things. My only problem with L.Bell is his lack of communication with his teammates. Now, football was a team sport, but every guy's an independent contractor. But you're relying on that other independent contractor so that we can all work together. So it becomes difficult when you can't have the same messaging to one of the guys that you're calling a brother, one of those guys you're calling a teammate. This is not your normal job. Like, we have a normal job. Everyone here has a responsibility. We all have individual contracts and everything. But I'm not relying on you guys like the way you do with a football team. And your word in that locker room, it does mean something. So my biggest problem is when he told the offensive lineman, I'm going to be there in a couple days. Because in doing that, now you put the linemen out there where they're getting ready to vouch for your holdout to the media. So now you made them look bad. So my only problem with L.Bell has been when he made his teammates look bad, and I just believe his agent got in his ear to change his messaging point. If he had told his teammates this summer, listen, guys, this second year of franchising, it's not going to be like year number one. I might not be there till the bye week. His teammates would have appreciated that. Their messaging would have been totally different, and I believe that he, from a PR standpoint, would be at a different point.
So he did an interview with Jeremy Fowler, who broke this story of ESPN, and he says that either it was miscommunication or something, because he's saying he didn't tell his teammates at any point when he was going to show up. Now, clearly, a lot of people in that locker room thought he did. So I don't know if it was miscommunication.
Well, let's do this. Let me tell you, he didn't tell him he wasn't going to show up.
Sure. That is clear.
When you tell me you're not going to show up, what do you tell him?
Or you don't say I'm not going to be there. Sure, absolutely. And
what else were they supposed to assume?
That he was going to do what he did last year. Fair enough. And so I just wanted, but the other parts of this interview, I feel like he makes very salient points. He says, I always wanted to play football this year, and he says, I want to retire a Steeler. Now, that might be out the window, but maybe it's not. What he said very clearly is that I did not think, when I didn't have guaranteed money after this year, it was a good move to put 400 touches on my body again. We've talked about it a lot. Most touches per game in NFL history, Le'Veon Bell, 405 touches last year. So he did have a very calculated approach, and I think we can all say the messaging got askew. That if he had said from the very beginning, I'm showing up at the bye, guys, just so everybody knows, then A, the story would have been put to rest, and B, I think you can make the argument for it that, hey, the Steelers.
I don't think he knew. Why wouldn't you? I mean, why wouldn't you say that if that's when you were going to show up? That's what your plan was. I don't think he knew what his exact plan was.
No, he definitely didn't know. And that's why you had the miscommunication between him and his teammates.
Quick question, though. You heard what there were some angry players. There were some bruised players when all of this was first starting before the season started. How does a player come back into the locker room now and say, I'm going to need you guys to work for me? Yeah, they do need him. But when this first started, I forgot, maybe it was Minge. We had a coach out here that said it's going to be tough, that relationship coming back in for those guys to trust him and him to trust them again.
Everybody's got a job to do, but the trust between the players, what you say to one another, is different the type of trust you have for the organization.
So it gets forgotten.
It's not going to be forgotten, but I got a job to do. Like, you can't be a child. You got to grow up. I got grown man responsibility. Like the offensive line, you know what they got to do? They got to block.
Yeah.
Regardless of who is back there. So I'm not going to be sitting around wondering, oh, man, this guy, does he appreciate me? Don't nobody care nothing about this. This is pro football. You got a job to do. I got a job to do. And we can coexist and not like each other and totally disagree and totally be able to function and it not be a problem.
There are guys in locker rooms that despise each other. Right? Like, there's 53 guys. That has to be the case. There are guys, they get in arguments about politics, about religion, about whatever it is, and everyone has to be a professional. The Villanueva or Ramon Foster or Pouncey all of a sudden being like, you know what, I'm going to let L.Bell get crushed here. I don't buy into that at all. I'm not saying that's what you're saying. But the other reason that I think it will be an easier transition is can we show America what the Steelers have been on the ground since after week 1? Oh, they've been the worst rushing team in the league. They need him. Like, that's the other part of this is if James Conner and his great story, if he was the story of the season, then maybe it's easier to hold on to those hurt feelings or that bitterness. They need Le'Veon Bell. Now, the question for these next 2 weeks, to circle back to what you originally asked, can they survive? They got Atlanta and they have Cincy. Those are two teams that have very bad pass defenses and this year very good offenses. So the Steelers are going to have to go ahead and outscore Atlanta and Cincy because pre-L.Bell or post-L.Bell, that defense right now does not look to be Super Bowl caliber. So they're going to have to, through the air, it's going to be on Big Ben, it's going to be on Antonio Brown to keep them afloat. Because if they lose their next 2 games, when he comes back, they are shopping him strongly. If they're 1-4-1 at the bye, then your trade proposal to the Eagles, to me, becomes very interesting. They are now trying to recoup an asset for him.
Yeah, the one thing with L.Bell, and we can't omit this information, being suspended twice plays a role in if they're going to give him long-term money. Now, people talk about L.Bell and the subject with Pittsburgh Steelers all the time, lack of guarantees, long-term contract, but they forget that the player put himself in this position, now the organization, how can I give that guarantee where this guy decided his body's not the most important thing? So now with him holding out, you know what he's saying now? Oh, my body's the most important thing. But there's been a time in his career where his body was not the most important thing, and that's put the Steelers in a tough spot where they could only franchise him and not give him the type of guarantees that his productivity would warrant.
Also, the timing works out well for him. Then you come back on that bye week, you get paid for that week, then you don't have to play a game.
100%.
Oh, yeah, but he's given
up about $4 million, but he does get that $855 for the bye.
Yeah, one day his kid's going to be looking for that money.
Thanks for watching. Subscribe here to get the latest from the show. Also, be sure to check out more of the best clips from First Things First, or go watch a few segments from our other shows on FS1.